the news tonight, His Majesty the King holds talks with the Austrian President on utilizing the Jordanian-EU partnership agreement to build on bilateral cooperation in the investment and economic sectors. Iran and 6 world powers start a new round of negotiations in Vienna to settle the dispute over Tehran's nuclear program by late July. And the search of the missing Malaysia Airlines plane is at a critical point as efforts to pick up the pings again has so far been unsuccessful. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King, on a working visit to Vienna, voiced Jordan's strong interest to further develop relations with Austria, now holding the rotating EU presidency, and to continue coordination and consultation in a variety of fields. During talks with Austrian President Heinz Fischer, His Majesty said the two countries can build on existing bilateral ties, namely in the energy, water and transport sectors, as well as tourism and investment. The King also highlighted the Jordanian-European Partnership Agreement as an opportunity for businesses from both sides to increase their trade exchange and joint investments. The meeting also dealt with Middle East issues, especially U.S.-sponsored peace efforts to reach a deal between the Palestinians and Israelis. King Abdullah reiterated Jordan's support of a two-state solution according to international resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. On the Syria crisis, His Majesty again urged for a political solution that ends the suffering of the Syrian people and listed the kingdom's hardships as waves of Syrian refugees continue to flee into Jordan. Fisher valued His Majesty's peace efforts as well as Jordan's humanitarian stand with the Syrian people. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour made a tour of Petra district where he met with dignitaries and House representatives as well as local officials to discuss with them the needs of the area. He said the government accords due attention to Petra as a key archaeological and tourist attraction. Mansour said programs to upgrade the area's services, including the education and health sectors, as well as other infrastructural needs, are underway as part of the government's comprehensive development plans. He praised efforts by the Petra Development and Tourism Region Authority in supporting the government by taking over the implementation of needed projects and urged the people to also take part in developing the region. Palestinian and Israeli negotiators ended another U.S.-mediated session today with no signs of a breakthrough in efforts to save peace talks from collapse. As part of the U.S.-led bid to salvage the talks, Palestinian and Israeli chief negotiators, along with U.S. mediator Martin Indyk, reconvened late yesterday after what the United States had described as a serious and constructive meeting the day before. An Israeli official said the atmosphere was businesslike and the sides agreed to meet again to try to find a solution to the crisis. The official, however, did not specify when the next meeting would be held. In a statement about their latest discussions, U.S. State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki said gaps remain, but both sides are committed to narrowing those gaps. Over to Syria, and as the fighting continues to rage in various parts of the country, the Syrian government made clear it has no intention of delaying the presidential election, regardless of war or politics. Syrian Information Minister Omran Zabi said elections would be held in July and that military operations would continue regardless of the poll. International powers who back Syria's opposition have described the election plans as a parody of democracy that will kill the peace talks. On the ground, government forces have advanced around the capital and the Lebanese border in recent months, helping secure the center. Today, there were reports of heavy military fire in Rankous in Qalamoun, north of Damascus, in preparation to enter the town. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the Hezbollah-led operation began yesterday to take over the town from rebel forces. Meanwhile, the United Nations says a looming drought in Syria could push millions more into hunger and exacerbate the refugee crisis. According to the UN World Food Programme, Syria's northwestern region has received less than half of the average rainfall since September, and the country will need to import even more food. The agency says barley and livestock are also being hit, and the output of the cereal is likely to be about half of pre-conflict levels. In addition to the worst drought, the 3 years of civil war have ravaged infrastructure, leaving long-term damage to irrigation, power failures, and a lack of spare parts. This means the number of Syrians in need of emergency rations could rise to 6.5 million, up from 4.2 million now. And in Iraq, at least 2 policemen were killed when a suicide bomber detonated a truck full of explosives at a checkpoint in Tuzkormato, south of Kirkuk. 16 civilians were injured in the attack. It was not immediately clear who was behind the bombing, though there are suspicions it could be Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups. And over to Yemen, and in the ongoing unrest in the country, suspected militants killed 5 soldiers guarding a checkpoint in the southeastern part of the country. The gunmen stormed the Burum checkpoint on the border between Shabwa and Hadramaut provinces with automatic fire and grenades. It was a 3rd attack in 2 weeks in Hadramaut. And in the capital Sana'a, a leader of a Shiite Muslim party was wounded in a drive-by shooting, which also killed 2 guards. Iran and 6 world powers started a 2-day meeting at the UN complex in Vienna to settle the dispute over Tehran's nuclear program by late July. Chief negotiators at the United States, France, Germany, Britain, China and Russia want Iran to scale back its uranium enrichment activity to deny it any capability to quickly produce an atomic bomb. Both sides say they want to start drafting a comprehensive agreement next month, some 2 months before a July 20 deadline for finalizing the accord. Western officials say, however, that the parties are still far apart on key issues. The meeting was chaired by EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton and Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. A spokesman for the EU chief said he hoped the talks would make good progress in the next few days.
I can say is that we are involved in very detailed and substantial negotiations, and we're just trying as hard as we can to drive the process forward. What matters most to us is that there is a good agreement. Clearly we want to make progress as fast as quickly as possible, but the most important thing is the quality of the agreement. It has to be a good agreement that everyone is happy with. So we will work as hard as we can to achieve that.
And as talks over Iran's nuclear program continue, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the current view of the Iran breakout period for developing nuclear weapons capability is 2 months. Iran's breakout time is defined as how long it would take it to produce fissile material for one weapon.
If they make a decision to break out, I think it's public knowledge today that we're operating with a time period for a so-called breakout of about 2 months. That's been in the public domain. If they're overtly breaking out and breaking an agreement and starting to enrich and pursue it, they've made a huge consequential decision. And the greater likelihood is we are going to respond immediately.
In Ukraine, pro-Russian protests show no sign of stopping. In Luhansk, protesters continue their occupation of a state security building, blocking surrounding streets after storming the building on Sunday and demanding a referendum to join Russia. They say they want to save the southeast and all the Slavic world of Ukraine from extinction. 70 were detained by police. Here's more.
With tensions boiling throughout Ukraine, pro-Russian protests show no sign of backing down.
We demand a referendum. From the very first day, we've been demanding a referendum. But we want it to be a fair one so that the people from all over the world would come here to monitor it. And the gang, which is now meeting at the parliament, should not impose their opinion on us.
Overnight, riot police detained about 70 protesters who were occupying the government building in Kharkiv. Scuffles ensued in the morning. One protester said they just want peace.
Let the European Union, Russia, China, America come here. Let Yanukovych and all those other signatories come here and resolve all these issues and calm down the country. That's what we want.
In Kiev, the conflict is center stage in parliament. During an address by the head of the Communist Party, he questioned what Ukrainian authorities had done to prevent violence in the region. His comments prompted backlash from the far-right Nationalist Party, and a brawl broke out. The Communist Party had backed former President Viktor Yanukovych before he fled the country in February.
In the first state visit to Britain by an Irish president, Michael Higgins and his wife were greeted by Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall in London. Higgins later arrived for lunch at Windsor Castle with Queen Elizabeth as a guard of honour played the British and Irish national anthems. His visit crowns a big improvement in historically fraught relations between Dublin and London. In 2011, Queen Elizabeth made a historic visit to the Irish Republic, the first by a British monarch since Dublin won its independence from London in 1921. An Australian ship that picked up possible pings from the black box recorders of a missing Malaysia Airlines plane has been unable to detect any further signals. Experts said the month-long hunt in the Indian Ocean was at a critical stage, given the batteries in the black box beacons had already reached the end of the 30-day expected life. Though the signals represented the best lead in the search yet, efforts to pick up the pings again had so far been unsuccessful. Here are the details.
A US Navy P-8 Poseidon leaves Perth International Airport to begin another day searching for the Malaysia airliner jet, which went missing on March the 8th. There have been around 133 missions like this one, hunting for debris from flight MH370 in a remote area of the southern Indian Ocean. Not a single piece of wreckage has yet been found, but officials have concluded, based on satellite data, that it ended its flight in the sea, 1,500 kilometres west of Perth. A massive international operation in both air and sea is hunting for answers about what happened to the jet and the 239 people on board. Here video shows a US Navy towed pinger locator on board an Australian ship, picking up possible transmissions from the black box recorders. But no further signals have been traced since the weekend. Coordinator Air Chief Marshal Angus Houston said the search had to be narrowed before an underwater vehicle could look for wreckage on the sea floor.
It is a large area for a small submersible that has a very narrow field of search. And of course, it's literally crawling along the bottom of the ocean. So it's going to take a long, long time. That's why it's so important to try and get another transmission. Some of the false leads that we've had have been actually transmissions from the ship that was actually searching.
And time is running out as the search vessels race to detect the black boxes before the batteries die and the flight recorders go silent.
French designer Jean-Paul Gaultier kick-started the opening of his latest exhibition in London. The exhibition, dubbed The Fashion World of Jean-Paul Gaultier, which runs until August, celebrates his work with a moving catwalk and 165 of his designs. The show also includes stage costumes designed for singer Kylie Minogue, as well as the costumes for the films of Pedro Almodovar and Luc Besson's The Fifth Element, as well as photography, films and interactive mannequins. His creativity and inspirations are split into 8 sections in the exhibition. begin with the third stage of the Marathon des Sables in Morocco that saw a home win for Rachid El Morabiti. The Moroccan finished the 38-kilometer stage from Oud Mungarf to Bahalo in a time of 2 hours, 58 minutes and 47 seconds. Compatriots Abdel Qadir Al Muaziz and reigning champion Mohamed Ahansal finished second and third, respectively. And in the women's race, Lawrence Klein of France led the women's category with Nikki Kimball of the U.S. in second. Tomorrow's fourth stage is the 76-kilometer extended stage that leading runners will complete in a day, but not the slow runners. They will run all day and into the night. Construction workers on strike returned to the site of Rio's 2016 Olympic Park to continue pressing for higher pay and health care a day after clashing with security guards. They have been on strike since the 3rd, demanding more equality. The Olympic Park is one of the focal points of Rio's Olympic Games and will host judo, basketball, tennis and cycling events. Rio won the right to host the Summer Olympics and will become the first South American city to host the world's biggest multi-sport event. And finally, fair weather continues tonight in most regions with northwesterly moderate winds. Tomorrow, similar conditions prevail in most regions, but it will be relatively hot in the Jordan Valley and the Gulf of Aqaba, where winds will be northerly moderate to brisk and the seas calm. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King holds talks with the Austrian President on utilizing the Jordanian-EU partnership agreement to build on bilateral cooperation in the investment and economic sectors. Iran and 6 world powers start a new round of negotiations in Vienna to settle the dispute over Tehran's nuclear program by late July. And the search of the missing Malaysia Airlines plane is at a critical point as efforts to pick up the pings again has so far been unsuccessful. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.